There is a fine line between justification and explanation. So, explaining why we are the way that we are whilst taking accountability to transform something is very different from saying, I'm like this because of this, and then putting a ceiling on ourselves in terms of how we're going to show up, how we're going to behave, what we can create. Most people are consciously or subconsciously reacting to a lot of stimuli, thinking everything needs their attention. People think they're really deep, but they can't regulate that depth. The last real skill set you need to have that's super important is repairing conflict. Most relationships don't repair well. Most people don't repair well. Relationships aren't conflict free. Hello, welcome back. Today, I really want to speak about what it actually takes to build the relationships that you're craving. So the emotional depth, the emotional intimacy, the security, the safety, all of those things that you're craving to build inside of your relationships. I'm going to talk about the practical skill sets that you need to have, that you need to embody, and the areas that you really need to be focused on. And this is really for the women that are aware that they have wounding. They can understand why, to some degree, they behave the way they do, when they understand that there's a pattern and something that is repeating inside of the people that they attract or the relationship dynamics they're in, and are actually kind of, to some extent, done just rehashing or repeating the same things or rehashing the same wounds, and are actually looking for answers in terms of what it actually takes to build the relationship that you desire. What are the key things to focus on? What are the key areas? What are the skill sets we actually need? Because what I see a ton of out there is information in terms of your traumas, your wounds, why you are the way that you are. And I think everybody's at information overload. There is a lot less out there because there's a lot less people actually doing the transformational work. There's a lot less information out there that covers how to actually go from where you are to where you want to be, and what are the skill sets, what are the focus areas, what do you really need to be diving into and understanding in order to make that a reality if you desire to make secure, lasting, fulfilling, intimate relationships something that is a reality for you, irrespective of where you came from and what your upbringing was, or how secure or insecure your formative relationships were. So if you've done inner work, you're a self-aware woman, you've got understanding around why you are the way you are, and that you understand there's patterns repeating in relationship, we're going to go into now what you need to do to actually change the game. And this is everything we do, plus a ton more inside of my signature relationship program, Alchemy of Connection. So you can click the link in the show notes and get started there. So most people have this understanding that I'm drawn to these types of people because that's what my parents were like, or there's some familiarity there, or I'm repeating some pattern around being unfulfilled or feeling insecure in relationship. But they don't actually understand then how do I go about rewiring it. But also, quite often, people don't actually believe that that could be possible for them. And that was a big part of my story. Of course, beliefs are, a big part of what shapes our reality. And for me, if I could go back to my younger self now, I think it would be absolutely mind-blowing to tell her what is actually possible. Like, she'd probably have a sense of that possibility because that was inside of her. And that was the guiding light that I continued to follow. But to actually recognize it in reality and say, this is going to be your reality, this is how secure you're going to feel, this is how much you're going to heal, all of those things, that would be incredibly mind-blowing to that old belief system that I used to hold. So if you do sit whether it's in your relationships, your life, whatever it is, you sit within that belief system that you're really kind of challenged around what might be possible for you. And you really feel, is this any of this actually truly possible for me? But there's something in you that just, keeps leaning into the curiosity to find out what could possibly be there. Then you're in the right place. So let's start with staying in the wound and rehashing the wound, because when we're talking about relationship transformation, there is a fine line, or any area of our lives, there is a fine line between justification and explanation. So explaining why we are the way that we are whilst taking accountability to transform something is very different from saying, I'm like this because of this, and then putting a ceiling on ourselves in terms of how we're going to show up, how we're going to behave, what we can create. One's going to create an excuse for us to stay where we are, and the other is going to give an explanation around, what is the foundation, what is the current foundation that we have, but then remain open with curiosity to what else might be possible. So understanding the original pattern can be and is extremely, extremely validating. We need that. We need to know I didn't just spontaneously make up these patterns on my own. We really need to understand that that was something that was created relationally. It's super important to have that validation, to have that understanding, but that's not necessarily going to create the new behavior. It's not necessarily going to create the change that you actually desire. And so that's what we're going to really talk about today. So you can understand that you have abandonment wounding. You can understand that you go into fight and flight. You can understand that you dissociate or leave your body. And you can understand that, have some understanding of where those things came from. But the issue is not that lack of intelligence. The issue isn't that you don't understand, what your past was made up of or that it was problematic. It's not that lack of understanding. It's the key foundational patterns of security that live inside of your nervous system that we've never actually taken the time to truly, truly rewire. So you can keep gathering more information, or you can actually start the process of building something new. And in that process of building something new and creating a new foundation, you will naturally have more pieces and light bulb moments and memories and things drop in as you digest your past and as you integrate your past and alchemize it into something new. You will naturally have that experience come up of having more understanding of your past, of your experiences, of your patterns. And it is far better to have that happening and be integrating that as you're building a new reality, as you're building new patterns, than just to sit there and continue to flesh out and unpack the wounds and not actually take any steps forward to creating a new reality. So I'm going to talk you through what creating a secure relationship actually requires. And we do this all inside my program, plus a lot more. I'm just going to give you the real key pieces that I think are super important. And this doesn't mean that security in relationship is something that is without growth or it's perfect or it's not without challenge. And you'll really understand, I guess, that nuance more as we dive into all of this today. So the first thing we want to do is shift the foundation of what you're experiencing currently. There's a slowing down in this, non-negotiable, can't be avoided, because what creates a secure relationship really can be identified by the fact that your needs are met inside of it. You're not abandoning your baseline needs, and you're not abandoning your needs that evolve and come out as you grow and move through your different life seasons and transitions and phases. So your needs are met. An insecure relationship, your needs aren't met. And so how do we know the difference between the two if we've never slowed down enough to actually listen to the parts that we've always sped past? If we've never created that embodied literacy and that capacity for self-listening to understand, what is my body actually calling out for? What are my needs here? What do I need in my everyday life? And can I meet those to the point of regulation? Can I be regulated the majority of the time? Because to remain regulated, we are meeting our needs. As we expand, we meet the needs to kind of create the foundation to hold that expansion. As we add more to our life, things that are going to stretch us and stress us and push our edges, we bring in the foundations and the support and the things we need in order to give us that foundation that can actually hold that change and that expansion. So that's what we're talking about. If you're not able to do that yet on your own, that is the foundation of everything. Secure relationships will meet those needs, insecure ones will not. It's a difference between security in yourself, whether you're in partnership or not. I'm able to meet my needs, to stay grounded, to stay connected to myself, to advocate for myself, all of those things. So your internal security is your ability to stay connected to yourself whilst you're in connection with others. But to do that, you have to slow down enough to actually listen. You have to take those steps of actually tuning in, not filling the space, not filling the space with all of these endless distractions and things that you feel like you should be doing to keep up appearances. It's about tuning in and actually listening to what it is that is truly aligned for you. It's the part that most people will never do. So if you actually make that your number one priority, to slow down enough to actually start meeting your needs, then you're going to be ahead of the game. So this is also what's going to change the game in terms of, when I feel anxious, do I reach out and chase something? Or do I leak too much emotion or too much emotional explanation in trying to convince somebody of something? You'll start to recognize that these things aren't meeting a need for you. They're reaching outside of you to meet a need, but they're not actually meeting the need. So once you start to actually go through that process of listening, you'll realize the patterns that you've been playing out that you learned were never actually the thing that you needed to be doing. And it becomes so, so much easier. You're like, I was trying to get that need met and I was staying in this scarcity loop and I kept reaching and kept grasping and kept clinging, kept over-explaining, whatever it was, kept chasing. And when I actually identify the need that I was trying to get met and I realized it's not being met here, how else can I meet it? You go and meet it, that behavior dissolves. It's not going to dissolve instantly, but once your body learns that need can be met, and it doesn't happen through that completely shifts. And that requires felt body awareness, the ability to listen to your intuition, that you just develop that over time, because this isn't a scientific thing. Your body is giving you signals and then you're going, you're interpreting that. That means I'm hungry, or that means I'm tired, or that means I need to go and move my body, or that means I need to tend to my work, my career, my business. This means I need to do something creative, or I need to go catch up with people. Those are things that you interpret, and you create those neural pathways of understanding what your body is asking of you. That's the difference. That's the foundational difference. I could leave it there. That's the foundational difference between good relationships and not good relationships. It's the foundational difference between absolutely everything in your life. The next step and the next most important thing is you're going to learn the difference between a wounded response versus one that is anchored in truth. And this follows on from our first point of creating that foundation, knowing how to meet your needs. So this just unfolds over time. This isn't something that somebody can teach you or explain. But this is where we get confused between intuition and activation. And like I was saying in the first point, once you're creating those neural pathways and you're starting to really understand and listen to your instincts and interpret what your body is communicating with you, understanding what is an activation response and what is your deeper intuition becomes so much easier. So you're no longer like, oh, just because I'm anxious, therefore something must be wrong. Just because I feel fear, it doesn't necessarily mean I need to act or behave in this old way, this old pattern that was XYZ. Fear equals this behavior pattern. You're going to become a lot less hypersensitive to stimuli in the way that you're not going to be interpreting it so negatively. You can still be attuned and be aware of the nuances and subtleties of relationships and the things that are happening around you. But there's a very big difference between stimuli equaling a fear response that then causes you to behave in a certain way versus stimuli just being information and things not needing to be something you always have to react to or respond to. Most people are consciously or subconsciously reacting to a lot of stimuli, thinking everything needs their attention. Just scroll on Instagram, or go on the internet to see that, every, people all in the comment section, every stimuli, people think that it needs their attention, or every trigger needs their response. When we're attuned and able to meet our own needs, we're understanding that not everything is needing our attention, and we're going to be focused on the things that do. And just because you have a fight or flight response, that doesn't necessarily mean, you have to act on it. What you have to do is learn to feel what's happening in your body. So these are the things that you're going to develop over time. And it's going to be the thing that's going to help you discern between a real relational issue and an old wound that's just been touched. Because a real relational issue is something that you can still stay grounded in and try to resolve or change, but you're going to find that you keep coming up against the same issues and there doesn't seem to be a resolution. Versus an old wound that can be touched, that's just been touched or activated, the pathway from it being activated to the behavior and the conclusion that you've come to is going to be much quicker. You're not going to stay grounded in that situation, and you're much more likely to be reactive. And you've already drawn a black and white conclusion. So there's a very big difference between, I can understand that there's a truth and a reality in front of me that's unfolding because I am staying here and I'm staying present with it. And even though I'm present with it, I can't seem to move my way through it. I can't seem to find a healthy resolution or shift to this, versus something being very black and white or very reactive because something inside of you is being activated. This is never going to be perfect because we're always growing, we're always being tested, and we're always going to have some wounding coming up to some degree. But however, the further down the path of resolving our relational wounding and feeling sovereign and healthy and fulfilled and secure in our relationships, the less of that old wounding that is going to get triggered, the less reactive we are going to be, the more easeful that's going to feel. And then your relationships become that secure foundation for you to then go off into the world and have the challenges of your business or whatever it is that you want to build, your talent, your career, whatever that is you want to go out and build. And the problems aren't all about the relationship dynamic. The relationship is the foundation for you to then go and grow. It's the home, it's the place that's requires effort, but it's not the place where all of the problems are. The problems are then out there in what you're actually building and creating. And that's what we want to create. A lot of people see the relationship or the family or whatever that is as like the pinnacle of their life. And I'm not saying your relationships shouldn't absolutely be your greatest celebration and something to pour a lot of effort into in terms of something to achieve in life. But what I see a lot with people is we're naturally human beings. We're here to solve problems. We want to solve problems, and we're always going to solve for the problems that our beliefs tell us are an issue. So unless you're willing to adopt the belief that my relationships are healthy and then decide that if that were true, what problems would I then want to solve with my energy, with my creative energy? What would I want to do with that energy? You won't ever evolve past that. You won't ever create the secure relationships, and you'll keep solving for the problems that you believe need to be solved for. So the question is always, if I wasn't solving this problem, where would I be investing my energy? And starting to move towards that more. And then you'll start to notice the relationships that can actually help that to thrive. And the things that you want to create in your life, things you want to build, whether it's just your health or a career, business, whatever those things are, family. Once you start deciding that those are going to be a reality, and that your relationships are non-negotiable and they have to support that or not, then it becomes so much easier to discern between the reality of something that can be fixed and can be worked with because it's supporting all of these other areas of your life and facets of who you are, versus the one where it's going to limit you and you can't grow within it. So it's going to be much easier to discern between the wound versus the truth of things. The third thing I want to mention is that you want to stop using chemistry as this main compass. And this happens a lot. It happens a lot when people are incredibly focused on chemistry or attraction or things like that. And these things are important, but aligned values, the capacity to grow together, having people that support where you're going and what you want to do, all of those things are far more important. Kindness, patience, all of those things. Attraction is a part of it, but most people get so caught up in the chemistry of things, people when there's insecure relationship patterns, that they don't actually look to see, is that meeting these deeper needs? So having the ability to regulate and ground and not get caught up in something that seems to be high chemistry or something that even seems to be like maybe moving a bit too quickly is an incredibly important, it's a crucial skill. The number of red flags I've avoided because I wasn't willing to be caught up in the intensity or the instability of the way somebody else was moving. And because I was able to stay grounded, something I'm incredibly grateful for. So we're taught and sold this message or this image of romantic love, and that is part of it. Keeping romance as a part of your life should be important whether you're in a relationship or not. Romance, pleasure, things like this, we want to be romancing our life to some degree. However, that is not the reality of life when hard things are happening or you're in a season of life that's not so romantic or glamorous. So it's really important to understand that chemistry is an attraction, all of that is one element, but trusting that feeling alone without watching for the character of people, how they handle challenges, how they show up when you're at your lowest, how they treat other people, how they handle finances, how they handle conflict, how they treat themselves, how kind they are towards people behind their back, to their face. All of these things are the things that are going to make make a relationship container something secure and long-term versus the romantic feeling or the strong chemistry. And also it's important to understand that that intensity sometimes with strong chemistry can also sometimes be activating a response in your nervous system because the person might be hot and cold. They might be inconsistent. They might be uncertain. They might be confusing. It might be activating something in you that makes you feel like you need to prove yourself or chase, or it might be activating this scarcity around love and connection. So those can be familiar nervous system patterns. Those can be familiar wounds. So when we take chemistry away as the main metric, we're left with a whole world of other things that we need to explore. And you're much less likely to get caught up in patterns that activate old wounds or relationships that are going to lead you down a path that you don't want to go down. The things to make it really clear that you want to really look for outside of chemistry is consistency, not just in the way they show up for your relationship, but also how they show up to themselves. How consistent are they in showing up to the important things in their lives? Their relationships, their health, their business, their finances, all of these things. Emotional availability goes without saying, super important. How do they handle their own emotions? How do they communicate around their feelings? How do they remain curious around your feelings? Do they repair after conflict? Or is it a let's just let time pass kind of thing and hope that it gets better? That's not a skill. Honesty. Are they honest? Are they honest with themselves about their lives? Are they honest with you? Or are there things that are remaining unspoken? Do they have a capacity to have hard conversations? Or do they spiral? Do they avoid? Do they feel really scared about confrontation or hard things? Do they respect your boundaries, or do they sulk or really challenge you when you try to set a boundary? Is there a congruency between what they say and what they do? And then also, how does your body feel around them over time? This is why time is an incredibly important thing to give something where when there's chemistry or somebody's moving with urgency and trying to remove time or your capacity to discern, it's the ultimate red flag. Somebody who's going to make your life difficult is going to try and remove your capacity to discern and see. So they're going to try and move really quickly. They're going to try and move past your boundaries. They're not going to respect those things, because if you set those and you actually give it space and time, you're going to see all of them, and they don't want to be seen in that way. They want to try to make sure you don't see them. People don't want you to see them, and they're not willing to let themselves be seen by giving spaciousness to learn each other and time to learn each other. That's a red flag. So you don't build a secure relationship by ignoring the factor of chemistry and attraction, but you build them through making sure that that doesn't outrun or override the reality of all of the other things. The next one is what I would call clean communication. And this is the ability to communicate what we're feeling, communicate what we need, and then listen to the response and be curious about the other person's experience and negotiate. And ideally doing all of that without attacking, without going into protest behaviors, without seeing the other person as a threat and actually seeing the problem as something to solve rather than the other person as somebody that is against you. So clean communication is communication that happens without what we'll call protest behaviors. And protest behaviors can be things like sending long paragraphs to try and get your needs met or get reassurance, withdrawing to punish the other person because you're not happy, becoming cold or distant instead of actually just being honest. This one's kind of similar to the long paragraph text messages things, but over-explaining your worth and your value. Also, rehashing things or asking questions you already know the answer to, or looping inside of things that have been resolved, or trying to force closeness because you're afraid of distance. So clean communication is different. You're going to name what happened. You're going to put that thing in the center of the relationship rather than, you did this and it becomes me versus you. You're going to put the issue in the center. Something you're both going to work on in the middle rather than one person versus another. So you're going to name what happened. You're going to say what it is that you felt. You're going to name whatever the need is. And then you're going to remain curious about the other person's response. And you're going to negotiate. So either there's going to be a boundary or you're going to get communication, like you're going to get clarity from them around maybe they meant something different. There might be a clarity that you receive from them. Then you're probably going to set a boundary around what you will and won't tolerate. And you're going to remain open to hearing their perspective of things. But if at any point they go into protest behavior and they aren't able to meet you with the same clear communication, the same groundedness, the same respect, if they attack you, if they go into withdrawal or being cold, if they present you with over justifications of their behavior and then start going on all of these tangents about, because they feel attacked about why they're a good person when you haven't attacked them, you've just named the issue. If this consistently happens, of course, if somebody's stressed and at their capacity, these things can come up. But if that is happening multiple times and that is a consistent behavior and a pattern, you are dealing with somebody that cannot meet you in communication. And that is a big issue. Friendship, romantic, whatever it is, that's a massive issue. You have different emotional skills. You have different levels of emotional maturity. You have different levels of emotional availability. And so if you were to say, when plans change last minute and you don't communicate, that I really feel unsettled in that. It feels like my time isn't being respected. And so consistency really, really matters to me. And can we talk about how that might work for both of us and what you're able to offer? And, we'll see what we can and what agreement we can come to if we can, because then you have to decide, does that work for you? Does what they're offering you actually work for you? And you have to be willing to be in relationship with reality in these situations, because the information you're getting, someone is always telling you what they have the capacity for. And if you are continually being shown who they are and you continue to choose to stay whilst feeling incredibly frustrated or resentful of the dynamic and it's not changed, you have to take responsibility for the fact that you're staying there. The next step is for you to build your capacity to receive. So much of this happens through the slowing down that we spoke about at the start. Our receptivity is our capacity to be. So it's really when we've stopped kind of that forward momentum and the action taking, and we're just in integration. We're in rest and digest. We're in the beingness. And we're rather than going out and getting, we're allowing life to come to us. And so many people are focused on like, how do I stop? Like, what's the solution? Just give me the action that I need to take. When the reality is you actually need to slow down enough to receive. But this can be really triggering for a nervous system that's always had to manage and control everything. And so if you're in managing and you're in control and you're in overfunctioning, receptivity is going to feel really unfamiliar. And you're only going to be used to receiving something kind of around the bare minimum. Because when you're in doing, when you're in overfunctioning, when you're in control, when you're in management, when you're in hypervigilance, the capacity to receive, because the action is so scattered, the capacity to receive is very shallow. So if you feel like you're receiving the bare minimum, it's because you are, and that's your capacity to receive. So in order to change what you're receiving, you have to change your capacity. Whether people can meet you there or not is what will be revealed in due time and in the process. So rather than focusing on like, what is the next thing that I need to do and how do I focus out here and make sure I'm choosing the right people and doing all of the things right and communicating right and staying in that really tense state, you actually have to learn to lean back, to breathe, to receive, to let go. And that's because when somebody is emotionally available, when they are consistent, when they are present, when they are direct, that is new sensory information for you to receive. And a lot of people can't receive depth. People think they're really deep, but they can't regulate that depth. They don't understand that depth. They're in the depths, but they're still very victimized by the depths. They don't receive the consistency, the stability that comes with having roots that are really, really anchored. Like that's true depth. Depth isn't when we're all scattered in these addictive patterns and out of our body and all emotional and all over the place. Depth is roots that are anchored. It's the capacity to hold that depth and understand it, not get swallowed up and consumed by it. So receiving at a new depth can feel and is completely vulnerable. It will bring up grief. It will bring up anger as well, frustrations, old wounds and agitations because it's going to come up against tension patterns that need to resolve. Consistency might feel suspicious. You might not trust it. Somebody caring, if you haven't learned to truly care for yourself, somebody really caring for you might make you feel really, really uncomfortable because you don't want to be seen at that depth. You're not ready for that level of visibility. And you also might get bored when you're not all stimulated and activated by unsteady relationship patterns. If a relationship is secure, the excitement will come from the things that you are co-creating. And of course, you want a connection that has emotional depth, and there's excitement in the way that, you guys think and move together. But your relationship isn't meant to be this thing that satiates all of these different facets of you. You have a secure foundation that then you can go and explore more of yourself. So if somebody isn't bringing you all of these things, maybe it's because you don't feel activated enough and you're not used to stability and security. You also may not trust somebody that does what they say they're going to do. If you're a bit inconsistent with following through on what you say you're going to do in terms of your own promises to yourself, when there's that congruency in somebody else, that might feel overwhelming, or you might not trust it. And you also might still be in that hypervigilance of interpreting stimuli as problematic and looking for problems to solve. So you're looking for flaws. I've seen this a lot in women who are looking for problems to solve based on, like we said before, the belief set that they have that relationships aren't safe or men are this or whatever it is. So looking for issues that if you chose to use that energy to problem solve for other things and solve the real issues or solve bigger issues, those flaws or those things may not be an issue. And you may miss the high of inconsistency and things like that if your body is wired for scarcity. So learning to receive, increasing your capacity to receive. Crucial. This I've mentioned, this is the next step, and this I've mentioned already, but I'm going to go into a little bit more depth with it today, and that is becoming loyal to the truth of reality, not what you wish things were, not the potential of what things could be. So many women get caught up in the idea of something, not what is actually in front of them. Been there, done that, can really speak to this with a lot of depth, but we're going to just keep it as succinct as possible today. You're falling in love with somebody with who somebody could be. You're also stuck in a loop of believing in your own potential versus accepting yourself as you are. Now, without this getting too heady, and I hope this lands and I say this right in a way that it goes in, there is a level of self-acceptance and exhale into the comfort of who you are as a person. That self-actualization comes when you reach a certain level of your own potential, right? So there is a truth in being attached to your own potential because you are chasing something that you need to get to in order for you to actually, your nervous system to relax. Once you have certain skill sets, once you show up in certain ways, once you can handle certain things, once your finances are in a certain position, once your health is in a certain position, all of those things play into how secure you are going to feel. So there is a truth to the fact that you can only accept yourself to the depth that you can right now, because I believe our soul is always looking at ourselves and saying whether we're living up to our potential or not. And you're going to feel like you've come out of the stress of self-abandonment and the health complications and the issues that come with that and the relationship complications when you followed your own path to a certain degree. So when you have reached a certain level of your potential that you feel secure and confident enough in yourself, this is when you're going to stop getting hooked into other people's potential, because you're still kind of chasing your own to some degree. And we're always following our potential and following those threads, but there's a certain level of that allows our nervous system to regulate. There's a certain level and certain standard that we have that allows us to come into a certain level of inner peace and security within ourselves. And so when that security has been developed, you won't fall for other people's potential, because people that haven't reached theirs to the same degree that you have can't manipulate you via your insecurities. So once there is that congruency in terms of I am who I say I am, I show up, this is what, I feel like I have value in the world, I feel confident in that, then the people that are still like their potential is still very far away and who they are right now is not somebody that really can meet you or nourish you, they can only access you through the self-doubts and through your insecurities. So once those have been resolved to a good degree, those hooks can't get into you, because you are living in reality. You are standing on business. You are doing what you said you were going to do. You have achieved what you set out to achieve, and it's not perfect, and you're a regular human and you're muddling through like everybody else. But there's a level of integrity, there's a level of congruency that people that are really still fractured from their potential, they can't access you in that place. This is why do what you say you're going to do. Show up to those promises for yourself. Learn to be your own greatest asset, your own best friend. Because then the people that are going to waste your time, waste your energy, they're just not going to get access. You're going to see much more clearly what are they consistently showing you. And if it's inconsistent or they're all over the place, not interested. How do they respond when you have a need? When you are very used to meeting your own needs consistently in a way that makes you feel really good, you're not interested in other people that can't meet you in that place. You're going to be asking, can they repair things? Do they take responsibility without making you do extra emotional labor? And do you feel more grounded or more destabilized over time? And then also, am I actually attracted to the whole person as they are? Or am I attracted to a version of them that I think they could potentially become? Or am I attracted to parts of them, but there's massive elements for me that are missing? Because what happens when we are attached to potential versus the reality of things is what you always find is there's a compartmentalization. We're very attached or happy with certain elements of things, but then there's a big chunk of things that is not working. And usually it's the majority, maybe it's, I don't know, I won't put a percentage on it, but there's a big chunk of stuff that just isn't aligning and isn't working. But when we are attached to potential, we hold on to the percentage of things that is working and we hang the entire relationship on that. And depending on your nervous system, that could be 20% of the person. That could be 5% of the person. It could be 50% of the person. But it needs to be 80% of the person. If we're talking romantic relationship, intimate relationship where you can grow with somebody, the less percentage of qualities that you are on board with, the further away that relationship should be to you in terms of, is that then a romantic, a close friend, an acquaintance? The more qualities they possess that are very different to your values, that you don't align with, the further out in that, the further away from you that person should be in terms of the relationship dynamic. And I also want to make sure we get time. Yeah. So let's just talk about those last 2 points and get this done nice and quickly. The last real skill set that you need to have that's super important is repairing conflict. Most relationships don't repair well. Most people don't repair well. Relationships aren't conflict free. They are all relationships should have conflict, because you've got two people with differing viewpoints, differing opinions, differing ways of seeing the world and interpreting things coming together. So by nature, we are in conflict with each other. We are in conflict because we are different people. When there's enmeshment, emotional codependency, things like this, there is a lot of expectation inside of insecure relationships that people put on everything, like each other, understanding everything with each other and agreeing on everything together. And that creates a lot of enmeshment, and it doesn't create healthy interdependence and sovereignty and the ability to be my own person and have my own opinions and viewpoints whilst also coexisting with this person. And that's where people feel kind of trapped inside of their relationships. There's not enough differentiation because there's not enough healthy conflict. So secure relationships we want the clear communication as much as possible. And when there's conflict, there is repair. There's a lot of repair. If somebody hurts somebody else, there is repair. Nobody is making somebody overly responsible for their own feelings, but where there's problems, there is repair. And most people are so conflict avoidant or fearful of conflict because when we were growing up, we didn't get repair. It was just conflict after conflict or conflict avoidance. So people will tend to try and fix everything quickly, or shut down and withdraw, or over apologize, or get really defensive. So repair actually requires honesty, humility, regulation, ownership, accountability, naming the impact we've had on other people, listening without feeling like we have to be on defense, and actually making changes to the way that we show up in relationship. And it's definitely not just coming back to the connection like nothing happened just because time has passed. So repair is super important. And the other thing that I'll say just before we close is that you want to be choosing relationships that match the future of your growth, not its past. So when we're talking about knowing the difference between whether we're choosing from a wound or choosing from alignment, you're never going to choose something that's not going to move you towards alignment. You're always on the path. You're never off the path. You're always on it, whether you like it or not. However, you asking yourself if you can continue to grow inside of the choices you're making and the relationships you're choosing is going to be the difference between you choosing from the wound of scarcity that says, I have to stay small, I have to shut down my voice, versus I can expand, I can repair inside of this, I can take accountability, I can grow. Because if the other person isn't doing those things alongside you, then they're going to match your past, where you came from, the places and the people that didn't repair, the places and the people that did shut down, the people and the places that exploded or blamed you or got really defensive. You're looking for the people that match, that match or are equally as invested in the things we've spoken about today. If that's the direction you're going in, that's the future of your relationships and that's the future of your nervous system. You're looking for people that are on a similar page to you in that respect. Otherwise, you're always going to be pulled down to the highest standard of the lowest person in your friendship circle, relationship circle, whatever it is. People can't outgrow their highest standard. So they're always going to pull you down to that. And so if that standard doesn't help you grow and is hindering your health, your sense of self, your sense of self-worth, if it's causing issues and ruptures, then we have to make some big decisions about, the alignment of certain relationship dynamics. So let's close it there. And if you want to get started creating these secure relationships for yourself, click the links in the show notes and we can get started.